than listen to me talking about product. But here you are, and I appreciate you taking the time, and it's good to see everybody tonight. We are going to have a little bit of fun with this. We're going to talk about product in a little bit different way than I have before, make it a little bit more concrete and real. First, I'm going to talk about some questions about product that we received just today. And one of those had to do with, if you're gone for a while from Arizona, I think it was, and your product is stuck in a mailbox in the 115 or whatever degree heat you guys are having down there, is that going to be a problem for the product? The short answer is no, as long as it's not too long. As being packed and not being exposed to direct sunlight will not, should not in the long term affect the product. If you left it there for a month or so, then I might change my answer. But for just a few days, I think you're going to be fine. And then we had a very interesting, very specialized question from one of you that I think is on the phone tonight. And that had to do with the question as to whether genomics was a zinc ionophore and would carry zinc into the cell. Janice raised her hand. I think she's the guilty party. And I can tell you that it was a specialized question that I did some research on. And the answer is probably. And the reason I say that is that the ingredients of genomics, Zephora japonica, which is a source of quercetin, and then you have ginger and you also have rosemary, are all known zinc ionophores. And what that means is that it will help zinc be absorbed more fully into the body. It helps carry zinc into the cell. And so is, and by the way, curcumin does as well. And now that said, if I wouldn't necessarily recommend talking about that with too many people, because by the time you get the ion of ionophore out of your mouth, they'll probably be asleep before you get to the rest of it. So if you have specialized interest, that's one thing, but I wouldn't say that it's not going to form the basis of most of our conversation tonight. But there you go, Janice. So if that's helpful for you, full speed ahead. Now, what I do want to talk about in the few minutes we have tonight are 3 B's. One of those is, and they all pertain to the month of August. One of those is be prepared. The other one is blocking and tackling, and the last one has to do with birthdays. And I'll tie those together. Today in our staff meeting, I asked people on our team, employees, what they liked the best about our products. If anyone had a particular story or benefit from our products that they liked the best. We got a lot of interesting stories. You'll be happy to know that not only do we talk about the products and encourage you to talk about the products and use them and become a product of the product, but all of our employees are great believers in the benefits of the product. They take them every day and they have some great results. So some of you know Jeff Harward. Jeff Harward is in our finance department. And he talked about something that happened to him when he was a Boy Scout more specifically. And he was at a Boy Scout camp at a lake in northern Utah called Bear Lake. And he said that he was out in the water doing various aquatic activities like canoeing and doing things like that. And and just playing in the water. And as kids do, they don't always keep their mouths shut when they're in the ocean or in the lake or in a river or in a pool. And so he swallowed more than once some of this lake water. Well, that's happened to all of us, I'm sure. And in fact, as a boy myself, I remember going to that very same Boy Scout camp at Bear Lake years and years ago, actually in the month of August. But in Jeff's case, he ended up ingesting some contaminated water that contained a parasite called Giardia. And Giardia can be very damaging to your gastrointestinal system. It provides all types, you can imagine, I don't have to go into gross detail into the types of problems he was suffering, but everything that you would think about in terms of gastrointestinal distress, he had. What makes it even worse is that these parasites as tiny as they are, still have a very small, they still have a very small shell. And so they're hard, and they get into your intestine, and they're very hard to remove. So he underwent some pretty powerful drugs to try and get this out of his system. And he made the comment. He said that since 2009, so over 10 years, 11 years, his intestines, and by extension, his gastrointestinal system, has not functioned correctly, has not functioned the way that it should. Until, he said, he started taking what he called, and I think it's okay for him to call it, our lawyers don't really recommend that we use this terminology, but he calls it the miracle pills. And in his case, the miracle pills are link. Now, I'm a firm believer in miracles, and I'm also a firm believer that all miracles, no matter how wonderful, at the end of the day are subject to natural laws. And that's the case here too, because link, of course, has butyric acid. And butyric acid has been known to, well, a couple of things. One, it is the energy or fuel source of choice for enteric cells as well as endothelial cells, which are those cells that line and make up the lining of our gastrointestinal system. But they also do something very interesting. They have what's called a trophic action. Now, trophic is the same word you heard of atrophy, and atrophy is when your muscles and your body starts to degrade and go downhill. That's atrophy. Well, the opposite is trophic action, and that means growth or regenerating. And butyric acid has been shown to have trophic action or cellular stimulus and growth action in the gastrointestinal system, including the intestines. And so him calling it a miracle is really based upon what scientists know is one of the wonderful benefits of butyric acid. I have one of the people that's on our advisory board, Richard Jones. He has suffered from diverticulitis. He also, coincidentally, calls link his miracle pills because since taking link, it has entirely alleviated his diverticulitis. And so that's really been something that's been a very strong benefit to him. Now, the next B I mentioned was blocking and tackling. Now, blocking and tackling, we talk about that. It's, you know, we say something that's very basic. It's just blocking and tackling, and that comes from football. And I love American football. I love football in Mexico, soccer as well, but I really like American football. And that involves blocking and tackling. And that brings me to a couple of stories that were shared. We have one of our customer service people, Maria Gonzalez. And as she mentioned that she had, not too long ago, and I didn't know this, had surgery to repair a broken femur. That must be incredibly painful. They say that one of the most painful things that you could ever experience in life is a broken femur. It's right up there next to a broken heart. Okay, sorry, that's dad humor coming out. But broken femurs are nothing to mess with. And she talked about how taking Octimend has really helped her deal with the pain of recovering from this surgery from a broken femur. Now, we hear that a lot, and we even talk about the pain relief aspects of Octimend. But again, there are scientific reasons for the fact that that pain is reduced. And that's because curcumin, in this case tetrahydrocurcumin, has been shown through a plethora of studies. Sorry, every once in a while, my lawyer background comes out and I'm required to use words like plethora, okay? So there are many, many studies out there regarding curcumin and turmeric and the fact that they downregulate certain anti-inflammatory genes known as cytokines. Now, these cytokines are something that have kind of a split personality, if you will. The cytokines are really responsible. They're part of the front line of defense in our immune system, so that when something bad comes into a foreign body, an invader, a pathogen, or a bacteria, or some other insult to our health enters in, this inflammation, they're often in the form of white blood cells called mast cells and other things. They come out and they attack. They say, okay, we're going to deal with this. And that's, in many respects, the inflammation that our body's immune system causes is very healthy, very necessary, and if we didn't have it, it would be a bad thing. On the other hand, like so many other things, too much of a good thing can be a bad thing, and that's the case of inflammation. And so so inflammation leading to pain, especially that's not part of a healthy healing process, can really be debilitating and require us to, and it can be distracting, it can be hard to deal with. And so we know that tetrahydrocurcumin is very bioavailable and is one of the things that operates upon these genes to downregulate these particular cytokines, often known as interleukins, like interleukin 6, interleukin 8. You don't have to remember this, although actually, Sherry, there is going to be a test later, so you have to remember. None of the rest of you guys have to, but Sherry has to. And you have to remember whether it's interleukin 6, interleukin 1, whatever. But all you need to know is that these cytokines are effectively dealt with in many cases by such things as curcumin and tetrahydrocurcumin. Now that ties into one of the things that we've talked about before, and that's with COVID-19 and other viruses. One of the problems of respiratory illnesses is that this immune response becomes sometimes an outsized, out of proportion immune response. And this inflammation affects the cells, and the cells become inflamed. Just like when a sliver or something gets into your skin, you notice that it gets red and it gets puffy and it's painful. Well, the same thing can happen when the cells, in this case, the cells in your respiratory system, in your lungs, become inflamed because they think it's the proper immune response, but it actually creates what are called cytokine storms or inflammation storms, meaning there's way too much inflammation. And the cells lose their ability to function as they normally could, leading to respiratory distress. You can't breathe. And that's why people need to go on ventilators and other things. And so when and curcumin has been shown to have a role in preventing or dealing with those type of cytokine storms. So that's part of the blocking that we're talking about. Now, in tackling, you might say, well, what are we talking about there? That's where Angie comes in. Angie told a story that was kind of had another chapter to it. I'd heard her story before, but she told it in a little bit different way today. Now, Angie suffers from allergies, and she has for a long time. And in the past, she's had to take allergy medicines. And allergies are a result of a lot of things. They can be things that get into our, we have food allergies, and a lot of times food allergies are a result of large food particles getting through holes in our gut, holes in our stomach lining, and you've heard about leaky gut. That's where that comes from. And even if they aren't food allergies, if they're dust mites, if they're pollen, if they're other things, often they get into the system by virtue of not being blocked by the body's defenses, whether that be the stomach lining, the mucus layers, and enzymes in our saliva, and those types of things. Well, Angie, you're there. I'm not sure if you said that you were receiving a lot of relief from by taking our products. In fact, she said, I don't even need to take my drugs anymore, and she attributed it to Link. But then today she told a different part of the story. She goes, I think it might actually be Optimint. And I think she's right on both accounts. I think it's both. And the reason for that is, we know that butyric acid, I mentioned earlier, is the food of choice for these endothelial cells that line the stomach. So if she's helping her gut and helping those holes get filled in, that probably is having a very strong benefit in terms of her allergies. But the other part of it has to do with that whole inflammatory response. Because what the body's response is to allergies, to these things that get through the system, is that, again, the body views these, whatever the allergen is, and in Angie's case, I'm not sure what it is, if it's pollen, if it's mold, if it's whatever it is. But when it gets through the defenses, then the body says, okay, we're going to burn this baby out. We're going to cause some problems here. And so it creates it sends out some specialized white blood cells called mast cells. And what mast cells do is that they have a histamine response. And that creates, watery eyes, an itchy nose, sore throats. That's where so when you have an antihistamine, that's when you take that in an over-the-counter product or something like that, that's to counterbalance what your body's immune system is doing to try and fight the allergen, or what's causing the allergy. Well, interestingly, is that curcumin is also a natural antihistamine. It causes those cytokines, those inflammatory cells that are sending out those guys to do battle, to say, whoa, calm down. We don't need so much of you. we're taking care of this. And so that combination of blocking, healing the stomach lining, trying to block those babies from getting in the first place, and then tackling, if they get through and they cause this inflammatory response by downregulating those inflammatory cytokines, is something that actually there's 3 products, Genomics, Link, and Optimend, that all do that through different pathways. It's really kind of cool. Now, I would love to say that we intended to do this. We intended to have all these products that work so well together, but we didn't. It was it was a miracle. And the fact is that we'll talk about Genomics here in a little bit, but we know that it battles oxidative stress. Well, so does curcumin. So does Link and butyric acid. Well, the third B that I want to talk about tonight is birthday. And that pertains to August, and I just had a birthday, and I turned 57. And as I get older, I want to make sure that I stay active and fit for as long as I can. And what's interesting, I was just reading something very interesting today. That it's an article entitled "NERF2: A Guardian of Health Span and Gatekeeper of Species Longevity." That sounds good, right? We want to live a long time, and maybe even more importantly, we want to make sure that our health span is really good. So I want to be able to continue to run and lift weights and play basketball and hike mountains and swim with my grandkids and do all of those type of things. Well, by having energy that comes in the form of these products like Link, because butyric acid has also been shown to have a key role in muscle building, believe it or not. You want to deal with the inevitable aches and pains that come from that activity. That's where the anti-inflammatories like Optimend come in. But what's interesting? We talk about oxidative stress, and some of you might remember what that is, oxidative stress is the cumulative damage, the total damage caused by reactive oxygen species, otherwise known as free radicals. And guess what? We can't avoid them. In fact, we don't really want to avoid them. They're a natural process of breathing. And so I guess if we stop breathing, we won't have any free radicals, but that's probably not a good alternative for most of us to consider. So we need to continue breathing. And guess what happens? When we breathe more, when we exercise more, we create more free radicals. That's one of the reasons why we get sore, because the free radicals themselves cause inflammation and throughout our body and throughout our muscles. Well, clearly, if we can reduce oxidative stress, what this study says is interesting for those of us who are getting older, and I don't know anyone on this call who's not getting older. No matter how old you are getting older one way or another. Even Angie and even Hunter is getting older, even as we speak. But it says, current proximate theories of aging are generally focused on a single causative factor. For example, the most widely accepted theory of aging is that it is due to oxidative stress. And so if you can decrease oxidative stress, you can decrease basically the effect of our environment. We can't live without oxygen, but think about it. If you put a banana, if you unpeel a banana, it turns brown. Why does it turn brown? Because of oxidation, oxidative stress. If you put a nail outside and leave it, it will be rusty. Why? Because it oxidizes. And so when we are subjecting ourselves to oxygen, to pollution, to other insults, we're producing oxidation in our own bodies. And so when we can decrease that, of course, we can make sure that our body is functioning as well as it can. Now, what's interesting is that we talked about this trophic action in regards to Link and how it increased and stimulated the regrowth of cells in the intestine. Do you know that it does the same thing in terms of stimulating the growth of brain cells? In combination with that, accidentally, for our purposes, if you can reduce oxidative stress and increase NRF2, NRF2 has also been shown to be cytoprotective. Cyto means cells, and so it means it protects cells. And particularly, they've noticed that in regards to brain cells, which most of us don't want to lose, we want to keep as many as we can and get more if we can. And so NRF2 helps combat the insults and the damage that can come to our brain. One of the things that's been very interesting and there's been a lot of research lately is that there are things that are called amyloids or brain plaque. Now, I don't need to go into a lot of detail, but if you think about going to the dentist and you go for your annual or semi-annual cleaning, what do they often clean off your teeth? They scrape it off with a tool, plaque. That sounds, it's pretty nasty, but at the end of the day, our teeth are a lot better. Well, now imagine having something called brain plaque.
Sorry.
Were they team teaching?
Sorry, if you can mute yourself. Brain plaque is also a byproduct of many of the things that we eat. And these beta amyloids, these proteins that come from a variety of products, they kind of get in our brain and they gum things up just like plaque does on your teeth. Well, the good news is that NRF2 can help alleviate, can help prevent that brain plaque from happening. So again, in regards to the blocking and the tackling, if you can block that brain plaque, if you can block those things that might want to hurt your brain cells, that's great. And then if you can take link and butyric acid and increase the number of brain cells that you got a good double whammy going on there. Well, finally, and I know this call has gone on for a little bit, and I hope you're staying awake. But one of the other people that talked to us was Patty, and Patty has, I didn't know this either, but she has suffered through thyroid cancer and had part of her thyroid removed. And she said how wonderful it was that by virtue of taking the products that she felt like she didn't even need to stay on her thyroid medicine, that she had good energy and she was, and now I would never tell her to go off of her thyroid medicine without talking to her doctor. But there's very good evidence that butyric acid and curcumin have a very strong impact upon the thyroid. How? Well, what it does is it actually signals thyroid transmitters to send thyroid hormone to various receptor sites throughout the body. And butyric acid and curcumin both play a very strong role in proper thyroid hormone regulation and modulation. So the fact is that, again, this trifecta that we have, these products of Genomics, of Link, of Optimend, work together to make sure that our genes are operating in as strong of a fashion as they can. One of the other things that I learned recently in researching NRF2 is that we know that NRF2 basically talks to, right? It basically influences hundreds, maybe thousands of genes. But guess what it also does? As a transcription factor, it's not the only transcription factor out in our body. There are other transcription factors that talk to other genes. And what scientists have found out is that these transcription factors crosstalk. They talk to each other. So NRF2 is not only affecting the direct genes that it's responsible for, it's also influencing a whole cascade of other genes in order to help this health span and longevity that we want and is so important for us and for our families. So I heard something today from I think it was Francisco, who is our general manager in Mexico. And he said that in Mexico, they're starting to use this phrase, that the trifecta is perfecta. Is that right, Susanna? Are you hearing that? And I think as soon as I heard that, I thought, that is perfect. It is perfecto. It is trifecta is perfecta. And I can tell you that we might be criticized for a lot of things. We might be criticized for being in network marketing. We might be criticized for being, I've been criticized for a lot of things, for not being very handsome, for being kind of stupid, for being slow, all types of things I've been criticized for. But one thing that I will never, ever have to worry about being criticized for are the quality of our products, the uniqueness of our products, the potential for the health benefits of our product, and the scientific underpinning and substantiation of our products. And so if you ever have anyone, now I wouldn't advise going into this type of detail with everyone any more than I would advise the average person who's not Janice Dysinger, because she's very far above average. But in most of us, I would not talk about ionophores either. But I will say this, all you have to do is say, I know people, I am one of those people who has had my health positively affected by this product. And by the way, the reason that you can count on the fact that it will benefit you too is not because of my experience, it's because of the science. The science is there, it proves it. You don't have to trust me. You don't have to believe me. You don't have to worry if my own personal benefit is the placebo effect. In some cases, it might be, but the placebo effect is it cannot be replicated. But scientifically, if you can prove things that are happening, not just for me, not just for Lorraine, not just for Stu, not just for Angie, but every time NRF2 is doing this on every cell of your body. Every time Link is butyric acid. Butyric acid is not just the fuel of choice for my endothelial cells, it's the fuel of choice for your endothelial cells and everybody else's. It's not just going to increase the number of brain cells in my head, it's going to increase the brain cells in Jerry's head. He might have to shave his head also just to create room for those new brain cells, Jerry. I highly recommend it. Yeah, I don't think he's gonna go for that. Well, listen, I can tell you this, that you can always count on ACTIVZ to provide you with answers to your questions. And more importantly, what you're doing when you share with others, you're providing answers to their questions. And that's how you change lives. That's how you become part of families' legacies. And indeed, you're already part of my family's legacy and the whole legacy of the ACTIVZ family. So thanks for being on tonight. It's great being with you. And I think if any of you are crazy enough or bored enough to want to listen to it, I think that Angie has actually recorded this and you'll be able to listen to it later. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.